This is something I've gate kept so hard. I'm really excited for this video because all of the marketing gurus are going to be really, really mad that this information is now just available on the internet. So today we're unpacking the 4 different buyer types, what they are, how to identify them, and how to sell to them. Now, if you are someone whose content has not been making you the amount of sales that you want it to, you're posting consistently, but you're not seeing sales, you are showing up on social media and people are like, wow, that's such good information, but no one's buying anything from you, this is what you need to know. And this is something that has been heavily, heavily gatekept in the marketing space. So I'm going to spill it all today. So there's 4 different buyer types, and their names are driver, analytical, amiable, and expressive. Buyer types are similar to love languages, where most people have a prominent buyer type, but it wouldn't be like a fulfilling relationship if you only had just one of the love languages, right? If you just had gift giving, if you just had words of affirmation, it wouldn't be a fulfilling relationship. And so the same goes for buyer types. Somebody might be predominantly an analytical buyer. If you don't have any expressive communication or any exchange of personality, it's probably not going to be a super fulfilling relationship for that buyer. So we're going to start with the first type of buyer, which is a driver buyer. I also happen to be a predominantly driver buyer, so I can really speak to this. So driver buyers are super goal oriented. They're very decisive, tend to be kind of impatient, ego driven, and want information really, really fast. So when I'm looking to make a purchase decision, I'm really not looking about price and all the elements of the offer or any of that. I just want to know what the outcome is and what it's going to do for me. So you can identify a driver buyer in conversation with them by looking at the way that they communicate. So drivers tend to speak in super declarative sentences, don't tend to ask a lot of questions, and tend to really project their voice, very confident in speaking. That's a very clear driver buyer. So the second type of buyer is an analytical buyer. My husband's one of these. So again, I can really, really speak to what this looks like. So analytical buyers love data, they love facts, they love a good spreadsheet, very no nonsense. And so if you're giving them like a flowery pitch with a bunch of like feel good language and super fluffy information about your program, they're really not going to be impressed by that. They want you to get straight to the facts. They really want to see things like the ROI. They're really logical. They're more cautious than any other personality or buyer type. So you can usually identify analytical buyers very quickly. They tend to be less expressive. They're very concerned with like facts rather than emotion. And in conversation, generally they're pretty direct and pretty formal. So they're usually pretty easy to identify. The next buyer type is an expressive buyer. So expressive buyers on our team, you guys know Sasha. Sasha's a very expressive buyer. So expressives care a lot about relationships. They're really concerned with experience rather than specific details, and they tend to buy based off of values and alignment. They're the type of buyer that really, really wants to be your best friend. So when you're talking to them, you might notice that you are getting really, really long messages, or their tone is super bubbly. They're using a lot of emojis. They respond really fast. That's an expressive buyer. And then you've got your amiable buyer. So amiable buyers also value personal relationships a lot, but they really, really want to trust you, and they really need their hands held to get to the checkout. So they'll be very enthusiastic. They're very willing to invest, but they're not going to make a decision quickly. So you can expect a longer sales process. They really want approval. They tend to be a little bit more people pleasers. So if you're seeing that with that conversation that you're having, and you notice that they're asking you a lot of personal questions, they're really wanting to get to know you so they can trust you more as a person, that's an amiable buyer that you're dealing with. So this could be a million and one videos, but I want to break down the top things that you can do to sell to and speak to each of these different buyer types in your content. So, starting off back at the beginning with your driver buyers, something that's going to be very priming and activating for them is credibility and authority building statements. So, if you're creating content around client wins and your own personal, using yourself as a testimonial, you're really highlighting how your experience sets you apart. You're maybe appealing to their ego a little bit. That's going to be very, very activating to a driver buyer. They really, really want to see you as a person of authority to actually invest with you. So that's going to be really, really important in selling that buyer type. When it comes to analytical buyers, the best way that you can prime them on social media is to showcase facts, stats, and ROIs. They want to see exactly how they're investing with you is going to lead to an ROI. They want a super clear breakdown of what you offer, and it needs to be readily accessible. So, having this in your highlights, having really clear work with me posts, not having fluffy sales pages, and not pressure or shaming in your content is really going to be activating to an analytical buyer. Now, with an expressive buyer, breaking down positive feedback that you've gotten from past clients in a more emotion driven way is going to be key. Again, they really, really are driven by that relationship. So, highlighting your relationship with past clients, how you made them feel cared for, how your offer is different from a support perspective, and really, really leaning into that social proof where we talk about the transparency content, where they can see your relationship and your business's relationship with the people that you've worked with in the past is going to be the number one thing that's super activating to expressive buyers. Now, finally, with your amiable buyers, there's quite a few things that you can really, really do to hit home to what they need to hear in order to be primed and be sold to. So, making them feel super seen and heard with your content, be super specific in your symptoms when you talk about their symptoms, lean into community selling, make them really feel a part of something, and help them make decisions through always including objection handling content in your posts, on your stories. That's going to be so, so important when it comes to actually activating and priming your amiable buyers to purchase. If you don't have a good understanding of the 4 different buyer types, who you're speaking to, how to sell to them, and have content that's actually speaking to each of them in your content, you're not going to be making sales. So if you've been posting consistently and your content just isn't really working for you, I can guarantee you it's because you have a lack of speaking and customization to the different types of buyers, which is why you're not really getting the response that you're hoping for. So if this was helpful for you at all, be sure to leave a comment, like the video, and my DMs are always open if you have any questions at all. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at kenda.laney if you want to see some of these things in action, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for being here.